Well, that's my cue. So I want to welcome everyone here this evening. Thank you so much for joining us for reading the new Colossus, A Conversation with Faith 250. My name is Michelle Scheinkoff. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the WRJ Vice President of Social Justice. And if you are just coming in, please, in the chat, let us know who you are, where you're from, your congregation, your sisterhood, women's group, if you're an individual member, all that really, really wonderful information so we can see our far reach and our WRJ network. We are so glad you are here for this important conversation. As our country marks the 250th anniversary of the United States, this is a meaningful moment to reflect on who we are, what values we hold, and how we continue to participate in this ongoing American experiment. WRJ is excited to be working with Faith 250 because their model fits so beautifully with who we are and how we work. Faith 250 offers a path to build relationships, engage with enduring American texts, listen deeply to one another, and help restore democratic civic culture through locally rooted groups. That is exactly the kind of work that can be brought back to our sisterhoods, women's groups, individual members, congregations, and communities. As WRJ, we also know the power of multi-faith relationships and collaboration. We are part of a number of multi-faith coalitions because we understand that when people of faith come together, we can build trust, strengthen communities, and make a real impact. Tonight, we will be looking together at the New Colossus by Emerald Lazarus, the poem written for and later inscribed at the base of the Statue of Liberty. Through the Faith 250 methodology, we will engage in conversation rooted in text study, listening, and reflection. The goal is not necessarily to come to one answer, but to hear different perspectives and seek understanding together. I am delighted to introduce our speakers this evening. Cathy Ross is the Outreach Coordinator for Faith 250. She brings a background in human rights and democratic governance through her work in nonprofit and philanthropic organizations. Derrick Scott III is the Program Director for Faith 250. His background includes campus ministry, digital innovation, and helping religious institutions adapt for the 21st century. We are also grateful that Rabbi Shoshanah Tornberg will share from her experience with her Faith 250 cluster and help guide us in conversation around the text. Cathy will introduce Rabbi Tornberg in more detail. Thank you again for being here, for bringing your curiosity, and for being part of this timely and important conversation. And now I am pleased to turn it over to Cathy Ross to tell us more about Faith 250.
Thank you, Michelle. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's really good to be together tonight with all of you. I just want to give a brief introduction to Faith 250 and to what we will be doing together over this hour. So in brief, during this 250th anniversary year, and in a context of deep divisions in our country, Faith 250 is inviting clergy and multi-faith groups to come together for fellowship and meaningful conversation about America's founding values. Michelle just gave a great recap of it in brief. I'll go a little bit deeper tonight. So one of the premises that we operate on is the notion that there is a invisible but vital civic backbone that faith groups provide in communities nationwide. These are the networks that you see when there are fires or floods or any kind of other emergency or disaster. Our democracy is in a different type of crisis, and faith communities have an important role in restoring and strengthening our civic health, our democratic civic health. When we first began talking with colleagues at WRJ, I was really impressed with what this group is and how it works. And we saw a lot of commonality in that both of our organizations are inspired by faith values. Um, there is a concern and a commitment to democracy and civic health, and that there's a willingness to thoughtfully take action. So we are really excited to be having this this kind of joint webinar tonight. So specifically, Faith 250 uses the practice of text study, which is familiar to many faith traditions, as the basis for reflection and engaged discussion to have real conversations about America at a time when that feels kind of fraught. Um, so we are listening to one another, building relationships, and testing and clarifying those values that we share as communities and as a nation. The way it works is that local clergy come together to form a Faith 250 cohort. They build or deepen their own relationships, facilitate multi-faith gatherings to discuss the texts. And those texts are listed here on this slide that you see, the Declaration of Independence, the new Colossus that we'll be discussing tonight, Frederick Douglass's address, What to the Slave is the 4th of July, and all the words, not just the first verse that everybody knows, of America the Beautiful. Many Faith 250 groups, Faith 250 clusters, are then holding public celebrations that they're inviting everybody in the community into of those shared values that are identified through the discussions. So I just want to briefly address what we are doing tonight and how that is related to Faith 250. So we are inviting you tonight to experience a part or a taste of what Faith 250 discussions can be like and how we can listen to each other about what this place and what this American experiment means to us. We will encourage you to consider bringing to the leadership of your own congregations the idea of forming a Faith 250 cluster in your communities. We understand that WRJ is particularly interested in having a number of, as many WRJ members involved in Faith 250 clusters throughout the fall so that you might arrive at the December conference ready to draw from that experience as the organization thinks about WRJ's strategy on democracy and civic health going forward, that this can be an experience that you could draw from and gain insights from. So while Faith 250 in general is about multi-faith gathering in person in a series of meetings to build the muscles of healthy civic culture that makes our democracy possible, what we are doing today is just a sliver and a taste of that. So instead of a multi-faith in-person series of gatherings, we're having an online meeting of Jewish women who all have made a commitment to be involved in WRJ. But even here, we can listen to each other across difference so that I hope that you will get a sense of what this kind of conversation could be like in your communities. So we have a very tight hour-long meeting planned. And because of that, I'm going to give a very brief introduction to Rabbi Shoshanah Tornberg. I think you have all been sent a full bio, and I encourage you to read that full bio, which is worth reading. We are delighted to have Rabbi Tornberg here tonight to lead the discussion. She was ordained in 2006, has served in many different communities, and since 2023 is the rabbi at Congregation Keneseth Israel in Allentown, Pennsylvania. She serves on the board of the newly formed group Equality PA. She's a member of the Lehigh Valley Jewish Clergy Group. And more important to our purposes tonight, she's led the Faith 250 cluster in the Lehigh Valley. So I'm handing it over to you, Rabbi. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Kathy. It's nice to meet everyone. I wish it was like a more personable way, but Maybe we'll get a little taste of each other. So I heard about this program, this project, uh, via email through a colleague, something like that. And it really struck me as important because it answers a question that I've been thinking about a lot as a leader in the Jewish community. And that is, everybody complains about all the polarization that we have in our society and how we're all stuck in these silos. And as a result, it has started for me to feel like, much like Cathy expressed, we are sort of losing our grip on some of the civic skills that make it possible for us to be a functioning democracy, make it possible for us to do things like sit across from somebody who we disagree with and be uncomfortable and have that be not unsafe, just uncomfortable, and be okay with that and learn how to take in others' stories so that you really can understand a different way of thinking. This is a deep and spiritual goal, I think, that we have as Americans. And this was really exciting to me because it laid out a way for us as faith, people involved in faith, to lead on this issue and to try to create the venue in which that kind of dialogue can happen. Now, as Cathy mentioned, we're more monolithic, perhaps, than some of the groups that are being gathered around the country. But nonetheless, gaining those skills for how to really listen to somebody else's experience is very important. And I really loved, as a member of the clergy, as a rabbi, the idea that we would use the lens of our scriptural traditions, and not just the content of our scriptural traditions, which was certainly part of it, but also that we would use the methods of our scriptural traditions. So, for example, Chavruta study is an important part of how we explore some of this text. I'm also, I don't know where anybody is politically, but one of the things that I struggle with is how to celebrate America at a time when it seems like flag waving is fairly jingoistic, and things like America the Beautiful are often sung without a lot of reflection. And this gave us a chance to really deeply, in a diverse group, reflect on which part of this feels true, which part of it feels not true yet. What goals does it lay out for us as we build an American future together? So I started gathering clergy who Cathy mentioned that I started my position here in Allentown in 2023, which means that I did not arrive. I haven't been here for so long, so I didn't have lots and lots of interfaith clergy connections. So I started to build them, and eventually we created a cohort that met throughout the fall, and then we started to gather members of our community throughout the spring, and we're now working on the third part of the third phase of the project, which is developing a way to commemorate, to meaningfully and reflectively commemorate the 250th anniversary, which feels really good to me because it means that we get to do it on terms that have to do with real faith reflection and not just accepting a party line that's being given to us. We get to claim our understanding of the meaning of America. So I wanted to show you a little bit about some of the materials that went into my first session. Well, the first session that we did as a congregation, as congregational groups, we did it at my congregation, Keneseth Israel. And I'd love it if Derrick, there you are. Derrick can show us kind of some of the things that we literally had on a slideshow so that people could see them. Some of these things I'm just going to show you. Others we're going to actually go through. So Derrick, if you could move down to the next one. Okay, so we knew that we wanted to create a prayerful space. So one of the things that we did was we opened up the divider between the social hall where we were meeting and the sanctuary so that we could have that sacred space as part of our space. And we had people who were gifted in music, lead us in two different songs. One was This Little Light of Mine, which we knew would be familiar to many people. And then we also taught Hine Matov, which emphasized the sense of togetherness and community that we were building. Please continue, Derrick. Then we had one of our members put together a blessing before eating. Eating was part of every one of our gatherings. And at our congregation, one of the things we did was that we had challah on every table. We invited other faith groups who were hosting at other sessions to have meaningful food at their tables. Now, we served a lot of other food, but there was like a motzi moment. We also had the opportunity to give tzedakah at each table. And if you can move along, we were trying to make prayer part of our experience. So the next couple of slides, I'm not going to read through all of them, but I'd love to give you a gander at them. This was given to us by Cathy and her team, and Derrick, they're all part of the team, to help us establish ground rules for how we would talk to one another. If you talk with a friend over coffee, you don't need these ground rules. They're sort of understood. But we needed to set some parameters that would allow us to, like I said, be in the conversation with something that maybe wasn't so comfortable for us, but still allow the space for others to talk and for us to hear and be heard. So let's, if you could just do the next one. So I love this one. Oops, one more, back. Yeah. Embrace curiosity and humility rather than certainty and knowledge. We're there not to change each other's opinions, but to deeply understand one another. So I love this curiosity idea because it was like you enter these conversations thinking about what is the story that this person has to share that leads them to the moment where they are the person that they are with the views that they have. And being curious about that story, not about proving them wrong, is a really hard headspace for Americans right now, at least the Americans that I know and love, that we are very quick to say, yes, but let's talk about this other side. That's not what this is for. The point is not to convince anybody. It's to dig deeper into what are the values that we see. And they could be different values that we see. We keep talking about these shared American values. You know, some of the American values that we might identify might not be shared by everyone in the group, but understanding and acknowledging, or at least identifying that, can be helpful. If we can go on, Derrick. I was just before this meeting, I was made aware of the fact that you were sent a handout, and I did not know that in advance. So I prepared slides of the handout that everybody receives in advance of the meetings that they attend. And so I don't know if anyone's had a chance to read it, but each handout has the reading itself. It has some background, some background on the piece, right? You could just read the piece, but without background, you might lose some stuff. And you also, it also had a leading question, an opening question for people to think about in advance. Okay, I do want to actually, Derrick, he's so flexible. Go back to the first white, up one more. There we go. I wonder if someone might read for us a little of the history, because it'll help set the stage for our discussion of the new Colossus. Is there someone that feels like reading? Marcy.
Immigration has long sparked controversy in America. While 19th century Americans welcomed those who, like them, were Northern European farmers or artisans, they opposed admitting impoverished Southern Europeans, like Italians, and equally impoverished Eastern European Jews.
If you'd be okay to continue, I'd love that.
This xenophobic period also saw the passage of the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, the end of Reconstruction, the rise of Jim Crow and the Ku Klux Klan, and the persecution of Native Americans across the continent. Written in 1883, the new Colossus asserts that America will be different from ancient empires and that it will welcome even the poorest newcomers. You're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses yearning to breathe free. That, however, was not the message that the French builders of the Statue of Liberty intended. Rather, they saw it as a celebration of the Union victory in the Civil War and gave it to America to mark a common commitment to individual liberty.
So I think a lot of us, uh, like me, well, if you're like me, you take for granted that the theme of the new Colossus was the theme of the Statue of Liberty and that the two go hand in hand. But actually, it was a great moment of activism on the part of this poet. Marcy, are you still good to read?
Sure. Lazarus thus, with a mere 14 lines of poetry, subverts the original intent of the Statue of Liberty. Perhaps due to her family's origins among the first Jewish immigrants to North America in 1654, or her work helping more recent Eastern European Jewish immigrants, she transformed this massive civic project into a symbol of open-armed welcome to immigrants arriving from across the Atlantic.
So it's so amazing because what we see here in this description is that not only did she subvert and create a new message, but that it actually was considered a radical message. It was not the message that those in power really wanted for the Statue of Liberty. And she was able to give voice to this thing that was so powerful in the country and really change the trajectory of how we think about the statue. If you move to the next slide, you'll see, yeah, there we go. This is what we asked people to come thinking about. What does the Statue of Liberty mean to you? It was a very, on the face of it, simple question, right? People have experiences with it, have seen it, have seen it, the iconography of it. What does it mean to you? And so, in the interests of familiarizing ourselves with this process, I'd love to know if one or two, maybe three of you would like to share your thoughts on what the Statue of Liberty means to you.